I just picked up a new lens. This is the Canon 10-18mm image stabilized lens from Canon. Obviously, it is a 67mm diameter on this, so your ND filters and your polarizers that you have for your 75 to 300s or your 18 to 55, which is recording this, they kind of won't work on this, sadly. However, you could get step-up rings for your other camera lenses and then not have to worry about it. You can just get 67mm lens polarizers. Of course, this is a very minimal zoom range of 10mm to 18, and it's not built cheaply, you know, it's an expensive enough lens. However, there's some downsides when it comes to build quality. The rings, the threading rings are plastic. However, that is the same with my 75 to 300. And the back of this lens, when you want to attach it to the lens mount, it's plastic. Very similar to my 18 to 55. Is this a problem? No. But for roughly the same price, I got this 75 to 300 and it is an aluminum lens mount. Now, this doesn't make a huge difference because it's a lens that you're going to be careful with, probably. You just need to be careful with it, that's all it is. Be careful when putting it on, putting it off, that you don't strip the threads that are on this. Because this is an aluminum lens mount that's on my Canon 700D. Of course, it depends on your camera. Sometimes you'll have a plastic lens mount if you have a Canon 4000D. Now let's talk about one of the key features of this lens. Image stabilization. Makes it perfect for vlogging. Now, ultra wide, it's very stable as is. Okay, it's very stable. However, you can use the image stabilization on this lens to pull off some incredible shots. You can turn off the image stabilization if you're using it on a gimbal, which is very real of a possibility. Also, this is one of the STM lenses, which means it's a really smooth focus ring, like really easy to use single-handedly. You're not going to have issues with this. It is a macro, of course. The minimum focus distance is 0.22 meters or 0.7 feet. The actual glass on top does bulge out a tiny bit, as you can see. Not the worst. It's an f4 to 5.6mm aperture lens, so obviously this is not a lens for low light in comparison to my 75 to 300. You can see, yeah, that's a very big aperture. Now, that doesn't really matter in a sense, aperture. It doesn't really matter when you're taking photos in daylight, which this camera is built for. However, I've taken some pretty nice evening shots, but you have to be comfortable with boosting the ISO if you want to use this camera lens. Now let's switch it over. How does it look in just a regular setup like this? Well, I'm going to switch this lens over to that camera and take away my 18 to 55. And whoa, you can instantly see the improvement here. This is 10mm. 10mm. This is crazy. Like, I can be way back here, comfortable in my chair now. I don't have to be squatting down from the table like I had to be before with the 18-55mm lens. And if you wanted to go back to 18mm, you still have that option. Now let's talk about this, you know. Oh, you can actually see my lenses now in the frame, which is pretty nice. But yeah, this is the perfect vlogging distance. Like, I have a Rode Video Micro up on top. You can hear me. I have my camera propped up on top of my laptop, but that's no biggie. This is incredible. Like I said, the aperture isn't great. Like, this is me recording video normally. Of course, I'll probably have to boost the ISO here so you can actually see me. That is what you need to learn. Another thing, this is a brilliant photography lens. I love this lens, what it is capable of for photography. Like, when you get into lenses, you know, you have your telephoto lens as one of your first lenses you get. Then of course you get the 18-55 as a kit lens, one that comes with your camera. It's a great old lens. Not built the best, in all fairness, but it does the job. But when you add this to your kit, it changes the whole dynamic, because you have things like your 18-55mm, your 10-18mm, and your 75-300. This is a nice all-round kit which allows you to have different focal length for everything. Now granted, I don't have a 55-75 in this, but maybe in the future I might expand the lens collection. But when you buy this combination of lenses and all that, this is perfect. I honestly cannot see any issues you having with having this lens. When I asked you guys on Twitter what you wanted to know, I got this question. In vlog mode, which is technically what I'm in now, 10mm, do you find that it distorts the image slightly when at 10mm? What do you think the optimal aperture for use is? Well, that's a brilliant question, and something I really think about this lens is you should keep the aperture at what the advertised aperture is, f4 to 5.6, and you'll generally have it at f5.6 when it's at 18mm closed in, but when you open up the aperture to f4, that's when this lens really shines. Of course, you have lenses like this 18-55 lens, which has an it has an f5 to 5.6 aperture, not the best, however, does the job. And of course you have this lens here, which does have an insane aperture. That's what you need to know about that. As regards to distorting the image, I don't think it distorts the image at all. When you get down to lenses like 7mm, then you really start to get in on the distortion. It does have a fisheye effect on a 7mm or less. However, I think a 10mm is the sweet spot. And there's a reason vloggers use 10mm. You know, we can get all the space behind me, you know, you can see everything, all that, and you can see all the mess. But that's another thing. But if I want to, I can zoom into 18mm so I can get like the same shot that I get with this lens, I get with my lens like that. Focal distance, like focus distance. Let's talk about focus now actually, bokeh. Bokeh is actually really good on this lens as well, the lens I'm recording on now. It allows you to, if you get close to an object, you can focus in on it. So you can get ultra wide shots, but focused in on a little object. Obviously the bokeh won't be insane like on my 75-300 here, which does give off insane photos. But yes, this is a brilliant addition to your kit. Obviously the autofocus is extremely fast because everything's in focus. However, if you go into 18mm, yeah, you can focus in on someone. Although, if you want a nice focal length, like to do a mid shot that in a vlog or whatever, I highly recommend the 14mm focal length. It's marked on the lens, and if I switch it to 14mm, this is what 14mm looks like. It looks great for YouTube content, honestly. And yes, I have a top 2 focus on the camera as well. But yes, at 14mm, of course, it'll let you focus in on objects like that. But it'll also let you do all this. I mean, heck, you know, this vlogging setup, I think is pretty good. Like 14mm is probably an ideal YouTube setup. 10mm is very wide. But where it shines is nature photography, like landscapes. It focuses in, it shines when you do any sort of like street photography, anything like that. Or the odd selfie. Who doesn't love the odd selfie? And of course, if you're a YouTuber, obviously this lens, not for everyone. Okay? I'm going to say now, this lens is not for everyone. Do not go out and buy this lens and hope that you'll be able to replace every single lens in your case. This is not the lens for that. However, things like the 10-22mm lens, which Casey Neistat was known to use back when he used the 70D. It is a bit more zoom distance and it's more expensive. So if that's the kind of thing you want, go for it. Good for you. But for most, start off with your 18-55 kit lens and then maybe get a 300mm, because 75-300mm, very nice lens, lovely smooth zoom ring, but I will say there's nothing like the zoom ring on an STM lens. It's just unheard of. That is an STM lens that I'm using now. Silent lenses, I love this lens. So, let me know what you think in the comment section below. Would you pick up a lens like this? Would you pick up a 75-300 instead? Or are you just going to stick with your kit lens? Or do you have any preferred ultra wide lenses? Let me know all that and more in the comment section below. I'm Connor, and I'll catch you next one.